Philadelphia is a growing green city, and recent changes and programs aimed at managing the runoff from snow and rainfall are having a positive impact. Stormwater runoff is a source of pollution impacting the Delaware and Schuylkill rivers, both water supplies for the region. You can see some of the changes in the University City section.
We frequently hear at the Delaware Riverkeeper Network from suburban communities that are experiencing an increase in development. They're not in the city, but they're on the outskirts of the city, or perhaps they are an urban area. Talk about how difficult it is to do best management practices for reducing the impacts of stormwater, whether you're talking about volume or pollution. The fact of the matter is there are tremendous opportunities for all of us everywhere. The city of Philadelphia is a great example of just using all kinds of best management practices and incorporating vegetation and ecological rehabilitation to help manage stormwater and stormwater runoff and avoid all the problems it causes.
In 2015, regulations changed, requiring projects in the city to catch the first inch and a half of rain.
But that's really been the game changer because it forces projects to find solutions.
Schumaker Plaza once housed 8 tennis courts before it was transformed into this green space. A system of sand and compost soils are used to hold the rainwater.
And part of the research has shown that with those soils, the roots grow very long. The grass roots were getting as long as 11 inches.
Stormwater now flows downhill and is captured in a giant cistern. The water is used to irrigate the land. None of the rain or snow that falls onto this area ever gets into the city's sewer system.
So it is fairly unique in that there was really nowhere for the water to go down. So we had to kind of keep it on the surface, keep sending it back out into the system, and hoping that the evapotranspiration would do the real work for keeping the stormwater out.
Designers and engineers had to work around centuries-old hurdles to complete the project.
The tennis courts themselves were a hard surface. Initially, we were hoping to use that sort of ground up as base and fill for some of the pathways and things like that. But what we found was beneath the tennis courts, they had demolished the buildings into their own basements. So we were just in a pretty terrible urban fill condition.
A few blocks away at Innovation Plaza, a city street has been transformed. This walkway is part of the University City Science Center's campus.
The goal of this project was to reduce existing impervious area. So we've removed the existing asphalt and replaced it with planting beds as well as a porous paver walkway.
Because of all of the utilities and all of the trouble that goes on under any street that's been turned into a plazascape, we didn't have much room to go down. So the first idea that we had was pulling the benches up to bench height, but bringing the planting up with them. So we were able to get some soil depth that we wouldn't have been able to get at ground level for some of the larger tree species and things like that as we move into the space. Around the edges, again, it's all native plants that are sort of heavy workhorses when it comes to water and habitat and bringing what we can into these sort of tight urban spaces. Because of the large buildings, there's big difference in the amount of sun over the course of the day. So thinking about the west facing and the east facing sides and using different plant material that would do better for those types of things, that was a big part of it. And then we were also able to save the giant oak tree, which was a big deal because it'll be many, many years before something of that scale will come back in. So taking what we could from that was a street tree previously, but trying to salvage as much as we could and then bring in stuff that is tough and we know will do well here.
The pathway, which salutes innovators from the region, takes on a different feel at night and is now a landmark in the city. The area that was once 32nd Street is also a pedestrian walkway. It's now called the Raymond G. Perelman Plaza at Drexel University. One of the original buildings, designed by famed architect Frank Furness, is at one end of the walkway. Permeable block pavers were installed along with raised beds. The combination either holds or uses the water.
In this site, it's particularly tricky because we have a train line running right below our feet. In some places, I think it's 18 inches of depth between the top of the train tunnel, which we couldn't touch, and the surface of the pavers. So really it was about getting the water, pushing as much of it as we can out to the sides where we were able to store some of it. And then that was the best we could do with the stormwater sort of in such a tight, limited space.
The Schuylkill River is a great recreational draw. Syrah Green overlooks the Schuylkill. It's a 52,000 square foot green roof. The 12th-story public park is nestled between the adjacent EVO and FMC towers. 18 trees tower over the park.
About 30,000 square feet of this space is vegetated, and the remainder is pavers. What's unique about these pavers, though, is that they are covering thin, what we call pancake cisterns. So there are cisterns under all of this paving that are holding stormwater and feeding it gradually into the vegetated spaces around it. Every year, about 700,000 gallons of stormwater that hit this park don't go into the sewer system.
These projects also have another benefit, reconnecting people with nature.
I think for most people who visit this space, they're not really thinking about what happens to the rain that falls here. They're thinking about the amenity of a rooftop park, public park, that allows them to experience the Schuylkill River and have a unique view and experience of Philadelphia.
The water is one component of a system that's restoring a healthy ecology in the urban areas and creating places for people. So you're creating gathering spaces, you're bringing nature accessible to people in an urban environment, you're creating habitat and places of refuge.